Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today I'm going to do part 2 of shoulder seam versus sloped shoulder. I think there's a few things that I didn't cover that might be worth looking at, and some things that you might need to true up after adjusting the shoulder that I did not show. Plus, I want to talk about what happens if you only adjust the back shoulder slope or lower the back shoulder arm and leave the front as is, and then compare that to lowering both the front and back shoulder, or I'm sorry, and then compare that to lowering the armhole in the front and back, so effectively adjusting the slope of the shoulder front and back. So just to kick things off here, I have my little mini half-scale dress form I got from a Sew Expo many years ago, and it's been sitting in my back shelf, and I thought I can use this to sort of illustrate things in a 3D manner without having to drag my big dress form over here. So I'm going to use mini paper pieces just to show you what the shoulder seam is doing around a shoulder after I show you how it looks flat. So the first thing I want to show you here is, this is the sample that we did last week. You can see the shoulder seam is straight, it's not sloped, but this angle here, which is the slope of the shoulder, is angled. The interesting thing is, when I adjusted the front as well, you can see that the shoulder seam is slightly angled or sloped down, but the slope of the shoulder basically stayed the same. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So now let's take a look at these pattern pieces on the dress form. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the mini pieces that I just lowered the back armhole onto this dress form, and then I'm going to show you the back, side, and front views so you can see what the shoulder seam is doing. So let's start with that. I'm going to pin, whoops, I'm going to leave this. I've got my shoulder seam taped together and I've got my side seam pinned together. So basically I'm just going to put this on the dress form, and I'm going to line it up. And it's too big for this dress form, but I just really want to show you if I pin it straight with the center front and back, what everything is doing. All right, so from the front view, you can see the shoulder seam here. And then from the back view, or let's do the side, you can see that the shoulder seam is sitting on the shoulder, and in the back you can see the neckline is up where it can be. Now, just keep in mind here, this is a standard form, so the model I had in the pictures last week had a significant slope. The back of her neckline was up higher. I just wanted to share with you sort of a 3D look of how this is. Now, the one thing I am noticing, if you look at the side view, is that the shoulder seam is a little bit angled. So it's from the base of the neck to the tip of the shoulder, it's angling towards the back slightly. So depending on how this fits your body, you may need to change the orientation of the shoulder seam by adding a little bit to the front and taking a little bit from the back at the neckline edge, just to get that shoulder seam to lay, you know, straight on your shoulder, in the center of your shoulder. But for the most part, this works and it looks good. Now let me remind you, when I did this last week, the reason why I only adjusted the back shoulder is that on the model, she had extra fabric hanging out in the back of her arm here. So there was extra vertical length here. And let's take a look at the picture again. I'm going to remind you. So here's the photo again. You can see it's loose fabric underneath her arm, or sort of at the base of her armhole. And that's what I was picking up when I lowered the armhole. So basically I shortened the amount of vertical space there. Then let's look at the front view again. You can see in the front it's fitting fine. There's no extra room hanging out at the base of the front of her arm. That's why I did not also lower the front armhole. So now let's look at the second version. I'm going to show this to you on the dress form, and then I'm going to show you the shapes of our armholes flat after this, because each of these methods has things that might need a tweak. So for example, on this one where we just lowered the back armhole like I showed last week in Fit Tip Tuesday, we might need to play with the angle of the shoulder seam itself by, adding a little to the front and taking away a little from the back to get it to be straight on your shoulder. Lowering both the back and front armhole leads to another truing up issue, and I'll show you that after. And if you're wondering, I'd used the same method to lower the front armhole as I showed you last week. And if you missed part 1, I'm going to put that in the description below so you can just click it and check that out as well. So now let me put this version on the dress form. Now this is the one where I lowered both the front and back armhole equally. So let me just get this so it's pinned on. And then in the back, I'm going to just pin that on. I mean, this isn't 100% ideal. This is just, I just wanted to illustrate in 3D what's happening. So here we have the front neckline, or the front view, and you can see the shoulder is straight. So lowering both armholes did create a straighter orientation of the seam. But you'll notice the slope of the shoulder, or the way it fits around the shoulder, is exactly the same. So here is the side view. Okay, so you can see that it's laying nice on there. And then the back looks identical to the first version where we just lowered the back armhole. So now what I want to do is I want to show you how these armholes look when I lay them flat on the table. I'm going to unpin the side seam so we can lay them flat with just the shoulder joined. Let's take a look at that now. First, let's look at the one that I did last week where I just lowered the back armhole. You can see here that I have a nice smooth shape front to back. Okay, this is important that the transition from front to back through the shoulder seam is smooth and straight, because if it isn't, it's going to create a peak at your shoulder seam, and if you're wearing a sleeveless garment, it's going to dip in there, and if you're attaching a sleeve, it could cause some issues with how the sleeve is fitting in if it's not straight there. So the version I did last week has a nice smooth C shape. Now let's look at the one where I lowered both the front and the back. All right, you can see here what happens when you lower the front and the back is you get a little bit of collapsing in the shoulder. And what I'm talking about here is the fact that this area right here, so through here, isn't 100% straight and smooth. It's almost like it's dipping in right here. So the way you would fix that is, I'm just going to put a blue sticky note right here. I hope it's going to be long enough to do this. So what you're going to have to do to true this up is I would take my ruler and I would draw myself a, let me find a different, better color here. You might need to extend that shoulder just a little bit to create that smooth shape. So you're going to have to add all of this purple, that I've added here into the shape of the shoulder to create a nice smooth shape. Or if this pattern fits you already perfectly at the tip of the shoulder and adding a 1/4 inch makes it hang off, you could do the reverse. Let me just show you that. You could actually carve it out a little bit more. So you could come up here, carve some off, and then carve a little off here to create more of a C shape. And I'm going to cut that off so you could see. And actually, I'm going to put a little, just want to make it lay flat, so I'm going to do that. I can actually just carve this off. Okay, and you can see now I have more of a smooth curve there. In the case where I lowered both, changing the slope by lowering both armholes, it created a divot here. So I'd have to fix that. On the first version, remember the front, the back was coming up a little bit too far. So what I would do, and I'll just show you, let me untape it here. Let me see if I can untape it. All right, I'm just going to cut it apart. Okay, so to fix the shoulder in our first version, I would add a little bit to the front at the neckline edge, because that's where it started to wrap a little bit too far forward. So let's just do this. And then over here, I would take a like amount off. So I would basically draw myself the exact same bit, and I would trim this off, and then that would create a shoulder seam that was straight on your shoulder. Now, if you're working with your own personal pattern and you need to adjust one or both, the position of the shoulder seam on your body might be different than what I showed you here, because remember, I'm working with paper on a teeny little mini dress form, so you know, it's going to be a little bit different. But just know, either way you do it, whether you just lower the back armhole because you need to pick up that fabric that's hanging out by your arm down there, or if you need to pick up both, so you're lowering both armholes to create that slope shoulder, there will be things to true up. So I hope this clears up any of the questions you may have had, or if you reached out to me, I know I've addressed the questions that were asked in this video. If you have more questions, please post them below and I will help you. I hope you're enjoying these Fit Tip Tuesday videos. I really have so much fun geeking out with the pattern pieces. It's one of my fun projects during the week to make these videos. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.